2022 has been one hell of a year for the world's leading mixed martial arts promotion, and with that in mind, we're going to take a look at 10 moments that really stood out for the UFC. Whether it was inside the octagon or beyond, these are the 10 craziest UFC moments of 2022. Number 10. A step up in competition. If 2020 was the year that made Khamzat Chimaev a household name, then 2022 was the year that saw him make an undeniable statement about his status as a top 5 welterweight. We all had more than a few questions about this Chechen prospect before he got in there with Gilbert Burns, but once the two squared off at UFC 273, any doubts we had about his heart and fighting spirit were well and truly put to bed. Faced with a fighter who was more than capable of handling him on the mat, Chimaev versus Burns turned into an all-out war on the feet, and boy, did it make for a compelling watch. Both men were hurt on more than one occasion, and though Khamzat eventually got his hand raised, this was about as tight of a fight as you could have asked for, a true litmus test for Khamzat Chimaev.
Give us your thoughts on how it went.
Tough guy, brother. I didn't know he was so tough.
Number 9. Paddy Pimblett steals the show. Love him or hate him, Paddy Pimblett has quickly become one of the most talked about fighters in the sport. And after getting off to a hot start in 2022, fans were eager to see just how far this outspoken star could climb. But when he came up against Jared Gordon in his first pay-per-view event, the hype train's momentum came to an abrupt halt. Sure, both fighters had their moments, but it was Gordon who appeared to have the clear edge over the 3 rounds, outlanding and out-wrestling the younger challenger. Once the fight concluded, the general consensus was that Gordon had done more than enough to earn the nod, with 23 out of 24 media outlets scoring the fight in his favor. Instead, the judges awarded Paddy Pimblett a unanimous decision win, which resulted in a good deal of backlash from the MMA community. Whether it was a robbery or simply a close contest, we'll let you decide. But what can't be disputed is the controversy surrounding the outcome, and for that reason, it makes an appearance on this list.
You don't think it was a close fight at all?
Not at all.
I'm a bit annoyed after it, actually. People saying he thought I lost. I'm pretty annoyed, to be honest.
Number 8. Rockholds redemption. One of the most unlikely redemption arcs of our time definitely deserves a mention on this list. Luke Rockhold seemed destined to be remembered as a hotshot champion who got his bell rung by Michael Bisping at UFC 199, losing his title in the process. And each of his subsequent fights only served to add more and more dark spots to his resume. But when he returned from a long absence in 2022 to take on Paulo Costa, something seemed different this time around, and after slowly winning the fans back to his cause through constant criticisms of Dana White and the UFC, he walked to the octagon and put on one hell of a fight against the hard-handed Brazilian. This gutsy performance showcased a far more likable version of the former champion, and despite him taking quite a lot of damage, he lasted all 3 rounds to earn a $50K performance bonus. A moral win, even in defeat.
Luke Rockhold, and what an amazing display of heart and courage.
Number 7. UFC 279 Fight Week. Chaotic doesn't even begin to describe UFC 279's fight week. Not only did the event's pre-fight press conference get canceled at the last minute due to a massive brawl that broke out between the members of several entourages.
Yeah, this ain't gonna happen. I apologize, everybody.
But just hours out from fight night, a disastrous weight miss from Khamzat Chimaev left the entire main card in disarray, with each of the top 3 bouts being changed at the very last minute. Sure, we thankfully got to see Nate Diaz end his UFC career on a victory over Tony Ferguson instead of a mauling at the hands of Chimaev, but this was, without question, one of the wildest event buildups in recent memory, sitting right up there with the likes of UFC 223 and its infamy. Number 6. Do Bronx's finest hour. The Charles Oliveira reign at 155 pounds was one of the most entertaining title runs we've ever seen in the sport, and after shedding his long-standing reputation as someone who can be broken, Oliveira started to defeat some of the greatest lightweights of his era one by one, eventually earning the respect of the masses and establishing himself as the most successful finisher in UFC history. But perhaps his finest hour came when he took on the show-stopping Justin Gaethje. Known as one of the toughest knights out in the sport, Gaethje, despite knocking Oliveira down twice, couldn't escape the first round and was ultimately submitted in one of the craziest fights of the year. Sure, it may not have gone down as an official title defense for Oliveira due to missing championship weight by half a pound, but it was still a truly special night. Number 5. Iron Mike's stunning KO. Michael Chandler may have had some ups and downs in 2022, but win or lose, he's undeniably must-see TV and has lived up to his reputation as one of the most exciting fighters on the roster. But when he faced off with the legendary Tony Ferguson at UFC 274, he truly delivered an unforgettable moment. While he did have some trouble in the opening round, Chandler came out strong in the second, throwing a vicious front kick and catching Ferguson right on the chin, which immediately put him to sleep. In 32 career their outings, it was the first time Tony Ferguson had been knocked unconscious. Not only was it one of the most brutal knockouts in the company's history, but arguably the best finish of the year as well. Number 4. The next wave. Look, picking Islam Makhachev to score the win over Charles Oliveira was by no means an outsider bet, but the level of dominance that the Dagestan native was able to have over one of the most dangerous fighters in the promotion was pretty shocking to watch. Islam dealt with Oliveira both on the mat and on the feet, eventually dropping him with a right hook before finishing him with an arm triangle in the second round. To be able to finish Charles Oliveira is already impressive enough, but to go there and force the tap from the promotion's best submission artist, that takes something truly special. If there were any doubts about the prowess of Khabib's protege and his ability to lead the next wave of Dagestani contenders, this victory proved that he is more than up to the task.
He's a pound-for-pound #1 fighter in right now, today.
Number 3. A 205-pound classic. The award for the most insane fight of the year most certainly has to go to the thrilling light heavyweight showdown between the former champion Glover Teixeira and the unmissable contender Jiri Prochazka. On paper, this was a stylistic matchup for the ages, a classic striker versus grappler showdown that ended up becoming one of the most evenly matched wars we've ever seen. Momentum swung back and forth throughout this fight as each man carved out major moments. And by the time the 5th round came, Jiri looked to be on the verge of getting finished as Teixeira worked his way through his opponent's wild striking style. But against all odds, Prochazka managed to take advantage of Glover's fatigue to overturn a bad position, end up on top, and eventually submit the champion to earn UFC gold. It was one hell of a performance. And though he would be forced to vacate the title shortly after due to a horrific injury, Jiri Prochazka earned the respect of the masses with this one, outlasting the great Glover Teixeira to write his name in the history books. Number 2. Pereira Arrives. Everyone knew that Alex Pereira's victories over Israel Adesanya in kickboxing gave him at least a puncher's chance when they finally competed in MMA. But what was quite surprising about his transition to mixed martial arts were the little things. How his training with Glover Teixeira had given him just enough in many different areas to be competitive with the champion. Pereira seemed to be a constant threat to the last stylebender when they squared off at UFC 281. And even though it wasn't always going his way, when the 5th round came, a stray shot that caught Adesanya gave him the opening he needed, finishing the fight with a flurry of strikes and becoming the new middleweight king. As one of the most untested and inexperienced champions in the sport's history, only time will tell how long Pereira can hold on to the belt for, and whether he can score yet another victory over his great rival. Number 1. The Rocky moment. Some fighters would probably kill for the opportunity to live up to their nickname in the way that Leon Edwards did against Kamaru Usman. During their rematch at UFC 278, the aptly named Rocky was getting pretty much dominated by Usman as the fight wore on, and by the time the 5th round came, it looked as though he would need a miracle to save him. Luckily for him, he just so happened to have one in his back pocket. With just a minute left on the clock and the commentators already writing him off, Edwards found his Rocky moment, unloading a massive head kick to the sport's pound-for-pound number 1, knocking him out cold in the process. Not only was this the craziest moment of 2022, it's also one of the craziest knockouts in UFC history.
Don't doubt me, I couldn't do it. The odds that I couldn't do it. Look at me now.
As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.